The Galactic Convergence Hall was built to make visitors feel small. Its ceiling curved so high that even the tallest species had to tilt their heads back to see the distant lights. The floor was wide and smooth, marked with symbols from hundreds of civilizations. Every sound echoed softly, reminding everyone present that this place belonged to the galaxy, not to any one world. Delegates filled the hall in careful order. Massive armored beings stood beside floating creatures of light. Insect-like nobles clicked their mandibles in quiet conversation. Artificial minds projected calm blue shapes where bodies were no longer needed. Every species displayed its power in its own way, through size, technology, color, or presence. At the center, raised above all others, sat the Empress. She ruled an empire that stretched across thousands of systems. Wars had ended because of a single command from her. Rebellions had died when her fleets entered orbit. Her people believed she could sense weakness the way predators sensed fear. Her eyes, dark and sharp, moved slowly across the hall, reading posture, movement, and silence. Most delegates avoided her gaze. Those who did not learned quickly to regret it. Near the outer ring of the hall stood the human representative. He was easy to miss. No armor, no glowing ornaments, no guards standing behind him. He wore simple dark clothing, fitted and plain. His hands rested at his sides. His stance was relaxed, feet firm against the floor. He did not speak. He did not move unless required. Humans were new to the convergence. Their territory was small, their technology respectable, but not impressive. Most species saw them as curious survivors from a harsh world, useful as traders or soldiers, but nothing more. That was the general opinion. The human's name was Elias Carter. He had been chosen not for his rank, but for his record. He had lived through conditions that would have killed most beings in the hall. Extreme gravity, limited air, long isolation. He had endured, adapted, and returned without complaint. He stood now, breathing slow and steady. The Empress's gaze moved across the delegates as it always did. Then, without warning, it stopped. Her eyes locked onto the human. At first, nothing seemed different. She had looked at countless beings before. But this time, something subtle changed. Her fingers paused against the arm of her throne. Her breathing slowed. The human felt it immediately. Years of training told him when attention turned dangerous. His body reacted before his thoughts did. Muscles adjusted. Balance shifted slightly. His heart rate remained calm, but ready. He did not look away. For a long moment, the convergence hall was silent. Then the Empress stood. That alone caused shock. She rarely rose during sessions. The sound of her movement echoed like distant thunder. Her tall form turned fully toward the human, and then she smiled. It was not warm. It was not kind. It was sharp, controlled, and filled with meaning. Whispers spread across the hall. Delegates exchanged signals of confusion and alarm. No one remembered the Empress smiling at a newcomer species. Elias did not move. He did not smile back. He simply met her gaze with quiet focus. The Empress studied him the way a hunter studied unfamiliar prey. Not to attack, but to understand. Her eyes traced his posture, the angle of his shoulders, the way his feet pressed into the floor. She saw tension, but not fear. Readiness, but not aggression. She spoke, and the hall fell into perfect silence. "Human representative," she said, "you stand alone." Elias inclined his head slightly. "Yes, Your Majesty." Her voice was calm, but her mind raced. Sensors fed her constant data. Life signs, neural activity, muscle tension. The readings were strange. The human's internal systems showed constant low-level stress, as if his body expected resistance at all times. Most species relaxed at rest. This one did not. "You show no symbols of status," the Empress continued. "No visible protection. Do humans not fear this place?" Elias considered his words carefully. "We respect it." A few delegates shifted uncomfortably. Respect was not submission. It was not weakness either. The Empress's smile widened just a fraction. She gestured subtly, and hidden systems activated. The environmental controls around the human adjusted. Gravity increased by a small margin. Barely noticeable to most species, Elias felt it instantly. His boots pressed harder against the floor, his spine aligned, muscles engaged without conscious effort. Years of living under heavier gravity had trained his body well. He did not step back. He did not strain. The Empress watched closely. No reaction, no sign of distress. Interesting, she increased the gravity again, still within safe diplomatic limits. The air density shifted slightly, thickening. Elias exhaled slowly through his nose. His chest expanded a bit more with each breath. His body compensated, pulling in oxygen more efficiently. His expression remained neutral. The Empress's advisors sent silent messages to her neural interface. Readings stable. No stress spikes. Adaptation observed. Her smile changed again. Now there was curiosity in it. And something else. Recognition. She lowered the gravity back to normal. Your body, she said, her voice carrying easily, is unusually prepared. Elias met her gaze. Our world required it. Some delegates scoffed quietly. Many worlds were harsh. That was nothing new. But the Empress did not dismiss the answer. She descended from her throne, each step deliberate. The distance between her and the human closed. The hall seemed to hold its breath. Standing before him, she was taller, broader, clearly more physically imposing by most standards. Yet the human did not shrink. He adjusted his stance just enough to remain balanced. Eyes level. You are not enhanced, she said. No artificial reinforcement. No visible modification. That is correct, Elias replied. Then why? She asked softly. Does your presence suggest readiness for violence without intent to cause it? The question struck deeper than any test. Elias paused. Honesty felt like the right choice. Because where we come from, he said, survival was never guaranteed. Our bodies learned to be ready, even when our minds wished for peace. Silence followed. The Empress straightened. Slowly, she nodded. Around them, the delegates felt a shift. This was no longer a minor exchange. This was the beginning of something larger. She turned back toward her throne, but not before speaking one final sentence. Observe the human delegation closely, she commanded her court. Not their weapons. Not their ships. Their bodies. As she resumed her seat, the smile remained. Elias exhaled quietly, only now allowing a fraction of tension to ease. He knew this was only the beginning. The galaxy had noticed humanity in a way it never had before, and once noticed, there was no returning to being ignored. The attention did not fade after the session ended. It followed Elias Carter out of the convergence hall, like a shadow that refused to detach. Eyes tracked him from balconies and corridors, sensors adjusted whenever he entered a space. The order had been given, and the entire Imperial system responded. Observe the human body. Elias felt it, though no one openly challenged him. Doors opened a fraction slower. Walkways subtly shifted. The air itself seemed to watch. He kept his pace even, steps measured, breathing steady. He had trained for hostile environments, but this was different. This was polite danger. The Empress's command spread quickly. Scientific councils, military observers, and diplomatic analysts all wanted data. Humanity had been categorized as minor for decades. That category was now under review. The first test came quietly. Elias was invited to a cultural exchange chamber, a neutral space where species demonstrated traditions of strength, endurance, or discipline. These events were usually harmless displays meant to build understanding. Elias recognized the timing for what it was. He accepted without hesitation. The chamber was wide and circular, with adjustable conditions built into its walls. Transparent panels allowed observers to watch from every angle. Delegates filled the upper tiers, murmuring with interest. The Empress did not attend in person, but her presence was felt through the weight of attention and the silent authority behind the event. One by one, species demonstrated their strengths. A crystalline being reshaped its body under pressure. A scaled warrior lifted massive weights with ease. A gravity-adapted creature stood calmly, as localized force fields pressed down on it. Then it was the human's turn. Elias stepped forward alone. He wore the same simple clothing. No tools, no visible support. He stood in the center of the chamber, hands relaxed, eyes forward. An official voice echoed through the space. "Human representative, you may choose a demonstration." Elias paused. Choosing would reveal intention. Refusing would reveal fear. "I will adapt to the chamber," he said. A ripple of surprise moved through the observers. Adaptation was not a single skill. It was a test of limits. The chamber accepted the input. The floor trembled slightly as gravity increased. Not extreme at first, but enough to challenge unprepared bodies. Elias felt the pull immediately. His knees flexed. His core tightened. He adjusted his posture without conscious thought. The gravity climbed again. Bones compressed. Muscles worked harder. His breathing deepened, slow and controlled. Sweat formed at his temples, but his expression remained calm. Observers watched closely. Data streamed across their displays. Muscle density, oxygen usage, heart rhythm, stress hormones. The readings showed strain, but not failure. Then the temperature rose. Heat pressed against his skin, dry and relentless. Elias felt his body respond, redirecting blood flow, releasing heat through sweat. He had trained in deserts and artificial heat zones. This was familiar discomfort. The air thinned next. Elias inhaled and felt less oxygen enter his lungs. He slowed his movements further, conserving energy. His vision sharpened as his body focused on efficiency. He had lived at high altitude for months during training. His blood adapted well. Minutes passed. Some species began to show discomfort just watching. For many, these conditions would have been fatal. For Elias, they were hard, but survivable. The gravity increased once more. A few observers expected him to collapse. His knees bent deeply. His arms trembled. For a moment, it looked like he might fall. He did not. He shifted his weight, spreading the load. His muscles burned. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. Still, he remained upright. The chamber held. Finally, the conditions stabilized. No further escalation. The test ended not because the human failed, but because the observers had seen enough. Elias exhaled slowly as the chamber returned to normal. His body felt heavy, exhausted, but intact. He stood quietly, letting his systems recover. The silence was complete. Then the chamber doors opened. The Empress's image appeared on a large display above the floor. She had chosen to observe the results directly. Her eyes were focused, sharp with interest. "You endured," she said. "Yes," Elias replied simply. "You did not dominate the chamber," she continued. "You did not overpower it. You adjusted. You conserved. You waited." Elias nodded. "That is how we survive." The Empress tilted her head slightly. "Many species claim resilience. Few demonstrate it without enhancement." She gestured, and data projections filled the air. Charts and comparisons showed human biological metrics beside galactic averages. Bone density, muscle efficiency, recovery speed, pain response. The differences were clear. "Your kind evolved under constant pressure," she said. "Not as rulers, not as apex conquerors, but as survivors." Elias met her gaze. Yes, the image faded, but the message remained. After that day, the tests continued. They were never called tests. Invitations to joint exercises, emergency simulations, environmental evaluations. Elias participated in all of them. He was never the strongest, never the fastest, but he always lasted longer than expected. When artificial night cycles were disrupted, he stayed alert. When resources were limited, he rationed instinctively. When simulations introduced sudden danger, his reactions were immediate and controlled. Other species began to notice patterns. Humans did not panic easily. They did not rely on perfect conditions. They planned for failure. During a joint rescue simulation, an unexpected structural collapse trapped several participants. Automated systems hesitated, calculating risk. Elias moved without waiting for instruction. He braced supports, used leverage instead of strength, and guided others to safety. When questioned later, he gave a simple answer. Waiting can be worse than acting. Word spread. Some species were uneasy. If humans adapted this well without trying, what would they do under true threat? Others saw opportunity. Allies that did not break were valuable. The Empress watched all of it. She requested private reports daily. She reviewed footage personally. She noticed small details others missed. How the human adjusted his grip. How he breathed under pressure. How his eyes scanned constantly, mapping exits and risks. This was not aggression. This was preparation. One evening, Elias was summoned to a private audience. The chamber was smaller, quieter. No observers. No tests. Just the Empress and the human. She studied him for a long moment before speaking. "You impress my court," she said. "Not because you seek to, but because you cannot help it." Elias chose his words carefully. "We learned long ago that comfort is temporary." Her expression softened, just slightly. "The galaxy is dangerous," she said. "Yet many have grown soft behind technology and shields. Your people did not have that luxury." "No," Elias agreed. "We adapted instead." She leaned forward. "Tell me this, human. If your species were threatened openly, not with tests or simulations, but with extinction, what would you do?" Elias did not answer immediately. When he spoke, his voice was calm. "We would endure first," he said. "Then we would learn, and then we would act." The Empress smiled again, that sharp, knowing curve of her lips. The galaxy had begun to understand something important. Humans were not impressive because of what they displayed. They were impressive because of what they were ready for. And the Empress, ruler of countless stars, was already considering how that readiness would change everything. The shift came without warning. It began as a routine emergency alert during a multi-species logistics exercise near the inner ring of the Empress's capital system. Cargo platforms drifted in controlled formation, escorted by automated drones and overseen by mixed crews. Elias Carter was present as an observer, assigned to evaluate coordination under stress. No one expected real danger. Then space folded wrong. Sensors screamed before alarms could sound. A gravity shear tore through the exercise zone, warping trajectories and slamming platforms into each other. One cargo ring shattered, sending debris spinning. Power grids failed. Communications fractured into static. This was no simulation. A rogue spatial anomaly, rare and violent, had emerged inside Imperial space. For most species, such anomalies meant one thing: evacuate, wait for specialists, accept losses. Panic spread quickly. Automated systems froze, unable to resolve conflicting data. Drones collided. Crews shouted in different languages, struggling to coordinate as gravity fluctuated wildly. Elias felt the change instantly. The floor lurched beneath his boots. His body reacted before his thoughts did. He dropped his center of gravity, grabbed a support rail, and anchored himself as artificial gravity spiked, then weakened. Around him, several delegates fell. One floated upward as gravity reversed. Another slammed hard into a bulkhead. Elias did not wait for orders. He moved. He pushed off the rail and crossed the chamber in controlled bursts, timing his steps with the gravity pulses. He grabbed the floating delegate, secured them with a tether, and kicked toward a stabilizing strut. His breathing stayed slow. His mind narrowed to essentials. Move. Secure. Stabilize. Overhead, structural warnings flashed. The cargo ring was tearing itself apart. Imperial Command attempted to regain control, but the anomaly interfered with long-range systems. Local decisions were required. Few made any. Many species froze, overwhelmed by the unpredictability. Their training assumed systems would hold, that protocols would apply. Elias had learned long ago that plans rarely survived first contact with chaos. He reached a junction where 3 corridors met, each leading to damaged sections. He assessed quickly. Sparks, pressure leaks, faint cries. He chose the corridor with the worst readings. Inside, gravity dropped to almost nothing. Debris floated like deadly shrapnel. Elias pushed off carefully, using handholds, controlling his momentum with small adjustments. His body remembered zero-gravity drills, failed equipment scenarios, worst-case environments. He reached a trapped engineer, their leg pinned under a twisted beam. The being's species was fragile, adapted to calm environments. Shock was setting in. Elias secured the area, braced himself against a wall, and applied force slowly, using leverage instead of strength. His muscles strained as gravity fluctuated again. But he adjusted, lifting just enough. The engineer was freed. He guided them back, shielding them as a pressure wave rippled through the corridor. The floor slammed back into place as gravity returned suddenly. Elias absorbed the impact with bent knees, keeping both of them upright. Elsewhere, things were worse. A central platform housing mixed command staff began to fall toward the anomaly's pull. Thrusters failed. Hundreds of lives were at risk. Imperial Command issued a withdrawal order. Too late. Elias heard it over broken comms and made a decision that would later be discussed across the galaxy. He ran toward the failing platform. Every instinct screamed danger. The gravity well was unstable. One mistake would mean being torn apart at the molecular level, but humans had evolved with instincts that favored action under threat. He reached an external access point and sealed himself in. The platform shook violently. Systems flickered. He accessed manual controls. Crude but functional. The design was alien, but physics was universal. He rerouted power, disabled automated safeties that were slowing response. He braced himself against a console as gravity surged, then dropped. His body endured forces that would have killed many species. Bones compressed. Blood pooled, then shifted. Pain flared, sharp and bright, but his focus did not break. He fired stabilization thrusters in short, controlled bursts, fighting the pull of the anomaly instead of resisting it fully. He did not try to overpower it. He worked around it. Slowly, the platform's descent slowed. Rescue craft began to respond as systems regained partial control. The anomaly destabilized itself, collapsing inward as quickly as it had formed. When the danger finally passed, the platform drifted, damaged but intact. Elias remained at the controls until relief teams arrived. When the hatch opened, he was still standing. His breathing was heavy now. His arms shook slightly, sweat soaked his clothing. There were signs of strain along his joints and neck, but he was conscious, stable, alive. The rescue team stared. Medical officers rushed forward, scanning him. The readings surprised them. Elevated stress markers. Yes. Microfractures in muscle fibers, bruising, nothing catastrophic. A human body pushed hard, but not beyond its limits. The incident spread faster than any report. Footage circulated through secure channels. Analysts replayed the moment he ran toward the collapsing platform. The data showed the forces involved. The risk calculations. The conclusion was unavoidable. The human should not have survived. Yet he had. The Empress watched the recordings in silence. She saw what others missed. He had not acted recklessly. Every movement was measured. Every decision balanced risk and reward. His body absorbed punishment, but his mind guided it carefully. This was not bravery born of ignorance. This was competence shaped by experience. She summoned her inner council. Around her gathered military leaders, scientists, and cultural historians. They spoke in low, urgent tones. Humans lack biological extremes, one said. They are not the strongest or fastest. Yet their endurance under variable conditions exceeds projections, another replied. They operate effectively without reliance on constant system support. They accept injury as a cost, not a failure. The Empress raised a hand, silencing them. You are missing the point, she said. She replayed the footage once more, focusing on a single moment. The second when Elias chose to run toward the platform, not away. He did not know he would survive. she said. He acted anyway. The room was quiet. That, she continued, is the true danger. Later, Elias recovered in a medical chamber. He lay still, letting his body heal. Pain pulsed through him in dull waves. He welcomed it. Pain meant he was still functional. A medical officer approached. You exceeded safe operational limits, they said, not accusing, simply stating fact. Elias nodded slightly. Limits are estimates. The officer studied him. Most species avoid such risk. Elias closed his eyes briefly. Most species did not evolve where we did. Word reached him that the Empress had requested his presence once he was cleared. When he entered the audience chamber, the atmosphere was different. There was no test. No hidden pressure. No subtle manipulation. Just attention. The Empress regarded him for a long moment. You endangered yourself, she said. Yes, Elias replied. You endangered Imperial assets. Yes. She leaned forward. And you saved lives that would have been lost. Yes. Her expression was unreadable. Why? She asked. Elias considered the question carefully. Because someone had to act, he said. And I could. The Empress studied him deeply now, no longer as a curiosity, but as a variable that altered equations. You did not seek reward, she said. You did not wait for command. You trusted your body and your judgment. Elias met her gaze. That is how we survive. For the first time, the Empress did not smile sharply. She smiled slowly, thoughtfully. The turning point had been reached. The galaxy had seen what humans did when theory failed, and chaos took over. They endured. They adapted. And when necessary, they stepped forward into danger. Not because they were fearless, but because they were ready. From that moment on, humanity was no longer being observed. It was being taken seriously. The days after the anomaly were quieter on the surface. But beneath that calm, the galaxy was changing. Reports moved through secure channels. Military councils debated. Scientific bodies rewrote classifications that had stood unchallenged for centuries. The words, human endurance, began appearing more often, followed closely by another phrase that unsettled many powerful species. Unpredictable under pressure. Elias Carter returned to duty after medical clearance. His body still carried marks of strain, faint stiffness in his movements, small reminders of what he had endured. He did not hide them, and he did not display them either. He simply continued. But the way others looked at him had changed. Where once there had been curiosity or dismissal, now there was caution. Guards straightened when he passed. Delegates lowered their voices. Even those physically larger or technologically superior measured their words more carefully around him. Humans were no longer background figures. They were variables. The Empress convened a full convergence assembly for the first time since the incident. Attendance was mandatory. Every major power sent representatives. The hall filled once again with colors, shapes, and quiet tension. Elias stood in his usual place, near the outer ring. No escort, no display. He felt the weight of attention pressing in from all sides, heavier than any gravity test. The Empress entered, and silence followed her like a shadow. She took her throne and did not speak at first. Her gaze moved across the hall, lingering briefly on several delegates, then settling on the human. She stood. This time, there was no surprise. Everyone felt that something important was about to be said. Members of the Galactic Convergence, she began, her voice steady and clear. Recent events have forced us to re-examine assumptions long held. Her eyes did not leave Elias. We believe stability came from control, from perfect systems, from predictable outcomes. A pause. We were wrong. Murmurs spread, quickly silenced by her raised hand. The anomaly revealed a truth many chose to ignore. She continued. The universe does not care for our plans. It breaks them without warning. She gestured, and a projection filled the air. Images from the incident appeared. Structural failure. Panic. Then, Elias, moving forward while others hesitated. This, the Empress said, is adaptation. Some delegates shifted uncomfortably. Humans do not rely on ideal conditions, she went on. They evolved where failure was common and survival uncertain. Their bodies learned to endure. Their minds learned to act when certainty was absent. Her gaze sharpened. This makes them dangerous. Not because they seek conflict, but because they function when others cannot. A ripple of reaction moved through the hall. Some species bristled. Others listened more closely. The Empress raised one final image. Data comparisons. Survival rates, recovery times, performance under stress. Therefore, she said, the human species will no longer be classified as a minor power. Silence fell like a physical force. They are to be recognized as adaptive apex survivors. The words echoed. Elias felt his breath catch for just a moment. He remained still. Not conquerors, the Empress clarified. Not rulers. Survivors who endure long enough to change outcomes. She turned fully toward the human. Elias Carter, she said. Step forward. He did. The walk across the hall felt longer than any corridor he had crossed before. Hundreds of eyes followed him. He stopped before the throne and inclined his head. You acted without command, the Empress said. You accepted pain, uncertainty, and risk to preserve lives not your own. Yes, Elias replied. Would you do so again? Yes. No hesitation. A few delegates exchanged uneasy looks. The Empress studied him carefully. Not because you were ordered. Not because you expected reward. No, Elias said. Because it needed to be done. The Empress nodded once. This, she announced to the hall, is why humans are no longer underestimated. She returned to her throne. But the shift remained. After the assembly, alliances began to change. Species that had once dismissed humanity now requested joint training. Not to copy human strength, but to learn human methods. How to operate with incomplete information. How to function when systems failed. How to endure discomfort without losing focus. Humans did not boast. They did not lecture. They demonstrated. They trained others to move under pressure, to breathe through stress, to accept that pain did not always mean defeat. Some species struggled. Others adapted. Those who adapted survived longer. Not all reactions were positive. Certain powers viewed humanity with suspicion. A species that endured too well was hard to intimidate, harder to control. Intelligence networks increased surveillance. Contingency plans were drafted. The Empress was aware of all of it. She summoned Elias for one final private audience. The chamber was quiet, lit softly, without the weight of ceremony. The Empress stood near a wide viewport, stars stretching endlessly beyond. You have changed the balance, she said, without accusation. Elias considered his response. We did not intend to. That does not matter, she replied. Intent does not erase impact. She turned to face him. The galaxy respects strength it can measure, she said. It fears strength it cannot predict, Elias nodded. We understand that. Do your people seek dominance? She asked. No, Elias said honestly. We seek survival. And a future where we don't face extinction alone. The Empress watched him closely. And if that future is threatened? Elias met her gaze, steady and calm. Then we will endure, he said. And then we will respond. The Empress smiled, not sharply, not with danger, with approval. You remind the galaxy of something it has forgotten, she said. That survival is not passive. She extended a hand, a rare gesture among her kind. Humanity will have a voice, she said. Not because you demanded it, but because you earned it. If Elias accepted the gesture with quiet respect. In the cycles that followed, the legend spread, not of a human who fought armies or shattered worlds, but of a human who stood when gravity tried to crush him, who moved when systems failed, who ran toward danger when logic suggested retreat. Across the stars, species began to tell the story in their own ways. Some called humans stubborn. Others called them relentless. A few called them terrifying. The Empress called them necessary. And whenever the story reached its final moment, it always ended the same way. With the image of an empress, ruler of countless systems, turning toward a quiet human and smiling. Because in that moment, she understood what truly impressed her. Not weapons, not technology, but a body and a will, shaped by survival itself.